the land that belonged to your granddad, to your father, and you will dine with me every night at my table. And so this happened up until the moment that King David kind of took off, because Absalom, his son, wanted to take over the kingdom. So instead of fighting for the kingdom with his son, King David decided to flee, right? I guess he just didn't want to confront his son. He didn't want to fight his son. He didn't want to kill his son, right? So he fled. Unfortunately, Absalom did die. It was kind of a freak accident. He was, kind of riding his horse, and his head kind of caught on some branches, and he hung himself on it. And, King David's, one of his soldiers did finish him off because he was still alive, and he died. So here we are between chapter 19, where King David is returning back to his kingdom after being extremely sad and mourning profusely for the death of his son. But he is returning back to his kingdom, and people are coming out. People are coming. People who were not with him, who kind of left him, who were kind of siding with Absalom, and were coming up and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, King. The circumstances, what they were, etc." And he was like kind of pardoning people and just saying, "Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it." And then came to him Mephibosheth. Now, if you remember, Ziba had run up to King David when King David was leaving and said, "Hey, you know what? Here are some figs. Here's some wine." And King David said, "Okay, thank you, but where's Mephi? Why isn't he here, with you?" And he said, and Ziba, his servant, said, "Well, actually, Mephi was kind of thinking, well, since King David is leaving, the kingdom may come back to my hands." And King David said, "Okay, well, I don't know why he's thinking like that after I was so kind to him, but." Anyway, so King David just said, "Listen, why don't you stay here? Don't come with me," because Ziba wanted to go along with him. Go, ride with King David out of the kingdom. And King David said, "No, stay here, be my ears, be my eyes, and, let me know if there's anything funny that just make me aware of whatever's going on here." So Ziba stayed. And let me just say this, because details are very important. Sometimes big pearls, big truths are discovered in details, right? So King Ziba stayed behind. Ziba stayed behind with Mephibosheth. Carry on like the way he had been before, like his servant. And yet Mephibosheth had an enemy in his own home. Ziba was not loyal to Mephibosheth. Apparently he was loyal to King David, right? But here is Mephibosheth with a servant in his home that was actually his enemy. But anyway, okay, so I put it out there. So chapter 19, 2 Samuel. King David is returning, and Mephibosheth comes up to King David, and this is what he says. "And Mephibosheth, the son of Saul," actually it's a grandson, "came down to meet the king. He had neither taken care of his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he came back into safety." So when I read that, I said, well, all right, so if Mephi was trying to take over King David's kingdom, why did he not take care of his person? He did not trim his beard. He did not take care of his feet because he had a impediment walking, so there was something wrong with his feet. So he didn't take care of himself all the time that King David was in hiding. Why didn't he? If he was siding with Absalom, if he was thinking that the kingdom would one day come back to him, why did he not care for himself, for his person? And when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, "Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?" And Mephibosheth answered, "My lord, my king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said to him, I will saddle a donkey for myself, and I may ride on it and go with the king. For your servant is lame." And he slandered your servant to my lord the king. And so what Mephi is saying, hey, you know what? I told Ziba, get a donkey ready for me so I can just run off with the king. And Ziba said, no, you're gonna slow him down because you're lame. Your physical impediment is gonna slow him down. So let me go. Let me go and give him these things. And he said, Mephi said, "For all of my father's house were but men doomed to death before my lord the king, but you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I then to cry to the king?" So he said, listen, I did not forget how kind you were and how you invited me to your table to eat. And so I am your servant. So do you think I would deceive you? And this is what King David responded to him. And the king said to him, "Why speak any more of your affairs? I have decided, you and Ziba shall divide the land." And Mephibosheth said to the king, "Oh, let him take it all, since my lord the king has come safely home." And then scripture goes on to talk about, the other people who came and just went on with some other stuff. So I remember when I read the first time, chapter 6, earlier, I think it's chapter 16, that Ziba came up and Ziba said, "Oh, this guy is thinking about taking over your kingdom." Something kind of didn't sit right in me. I'm like, is that true? Would this guy take the chance would Mephi take the chance of double-crossing King David after King David had been so kind to him, had reinstated his family's land to him, has gave him a family of servants, Ziba and his family, to serve him and his household, and had mandated for Mephibosheth to eat at his table every night, to eat with the king? Why would he throw all that away to be king, to have that responsibility, when God didn't even call him to be king? And he had a physical impediment. It's not like he didn't know what suffering meant or what being limited meant, because he was. So moving forward in chapter 19, we see kind of David, I don't know, I guess he was still kind of just worried about the whole deal with his son and how he died and how it all came down, and him having to return and kind of pick up the pieces and just get back to whatever he needed to get back to, this fighting with this people and fighting with the Philistines and fighting with these other people and just making sure that Israel was safe. That was just one more, one more ordinance, that he had to put in place. Like, okay, listen, I don't have time for this. I don't even know who to believe, you or Ziba. So you know what? The land is split between you guys. And Mephi said, "Hey, you know what? I don't need that land. I'm just glad you're back safely." So what am I trying to say here? We really have to stay close to God, because we really don't know who our enemies are. And sometimes our enemies and the people who don't have the best intentions for us are very close to us. And sometimes they don't start out that way, but they end up that way. And so may God help us to discern, and my God help us also to have favor. So even if we're double-crossed, to always have the favor of God over our lives, no matter what. All right, everyone. This is Tanya Rod, Jim Rockstone. Talk to you soon. Bye.